Kia ora, boys and girls. Welcome to the very first episode of the Drop Clutch with me, Ricky V. In this series, I'm going to be interviewing as many metal drummers from around New Zealand as I can to give some insight into what makes these guys and gals tick. Now, what better way to kick things off than with today's guest, one of the true MVPs of New Zealand metal, from filming various gigs and music videos around the country to driving touring bands around on their visits to our shores, to hosting his own show, The Distorted Transmission, where he interviews local bands from all corners of New Zealand. Ladies and gentlemen, Will Stairmand, also known as Will Bloodfarm. I hope you enjoy. Will, tell us about yourself, about your bands. Tell us what you got going on, man.
Okay, well, that's a large question. All right.
Yes.
As far as me, yeah, I sort of stopped drumming when I was about 24, and I took it up again when I was about 38. I bought an electronic kit in Japan and started uploading YouTube videos, just like practicing drums. And then Fukushima happened, so I ended up moving back here again unexpectedly. So I thought I'll try my hand at joining some bands. So that's kind of how it all started. I started videoing bands and trying to make connections and get to know what was going on. So yeah, I tried out for some bands. I ended up forming a band called Primacy, and I joined a band called Remote. Both bands are kind of dead now. They're kind of gone, but I did those for a long time. And then I started interviewing New Zealand bands, metal bands, and I interviewed a band called Terraset, which was a bedroom kind of a project that one guy had with a bunch of his mates. And after the interview, when we're outside just having a chat, I said, if you ever want to put some drums on it, some electronic drums, some program drums or whatever, to try to improve the drums, because the drums weren't great. He was a good guitarist, not great at drums. And he admitted that. So I said, if you want a hand with that, sure, I'll give you a hand. And then that was about 5 years ago. And since we found a bassist and found a rhythm guitarist, and the band's kind of become a thing. So now Terraset. We're a New Zealand metal band, influenced heavily by old school death metal stuff from the 90s because we're old cunts. Yeah. So that's basically where I'm at now,
Sure.
doing that sort of full time, just one band.
Sure. Okay. Well, you mentioned about starting drumming when you were 18, was it?
Well, I quit when I was 24. I actually started quite young. Like, Mum used to take photographs of me like smashing on the rubbish on the rubbish bins that we used to have in Auckland back. Like, I'm reasonably old. So this was in the early 70s, and we had like steel rubbish bins back then. And I used to get two big bits of wood and bash on them, much to the disappointment of all of our neighbours. But I sort of actually got into drumming at school when I was about 12, I guess, 11 or 12. I joined it was an intermediate school. Yeah, I sort of joined the orchestra, and there was like a kind of a jazz band, or not jazz band, like a brass band. They used to play things like Hip to Be Square and dirt, 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 and I'd play the drums. And I wasn't a good drummer, and I used to get evils from the music teacher all the time, Mrs. Winter, because I used to fuck up the drums all the time. But it was an introduction to drumming, and got my first drum set when I was about 13. I begged my dad, and we were living down in Wellington, and it was this really crappy drum set that was covered in like that kind of sticky black vinyl, because underneath all of the drum shells were different colors. They were all from different drums. It was just a bass drum and two mounted toms, no floor tom, snare drum, and like a really terrible old Zildjian ride, and a really crappy pair of really old like 70s Zildjian hats that were really thick. And it just sounded, I mean, maybe the cymbals might be worth something today, but they sounded awful. The whole thing sounded awful.
Sure.
and that's how I kind of started. Yeah.
Okay. Well, everybody's got to start somewhere, right?
Hmm.
Tell me, you've played in a number of bands across the years, but in terms of drummers, whose style do you think has influenced, particularly Terraset? Whose drumming has influenced you the most?
It's a hard question, really. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, this is like early 80s. I was listening to bands like AC/DC, Motorhead, the old, Iron Maiden, Power Slave sort of era. This was before Metallica kind of was a thing. So all those kind of drummers, particularly Nico McBrain from Iron Maiden, I suppose,
Sure,
influenced me back then. Not not that I could play like him, but I always sort of wanted to play like him. I think he inspired so many drummers to pick up sticks and have a go.
for sure.
Then, of course, Metallica came on the scene, and everyone wanted to be Lars Ulrich and play like Trapped Under Ice with the double kicks because that was an amazing thing in '84. Um, yeah. So I don't really know which drummer influences Terrace Head because it's kind of straight sort of 16th note double kicks for the most part because
Okay,
a lot of the riffs are like digga 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 digga. That's happening a lot, and that doesn't really allow the drummer much room to move.
sure.
Um, but on the recent albums, I've tried to be a bit more influential with the riffs and sort of trying in my 10 cents. Um, and so things have changed a little bit. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's no specific drummer really, because as the years roll by, I listen to new bands like Gojira, for example. I sort of discovered around 2014, 2015. And then the way the way Mario plays is very different than anybody I'd sort of ever heard before. So it
Mm,
was kind of like, oh, okay, you can do these offbeat fills and you can do all these crazy things. So I try to listen to new bands all the time. A lot of bands are very generic in the drumming department. Everyone's playing 1,000 miles an hour, which I can't do. So I tend to listen out for guys with groove and guys with interesting chops and ideas that they've incorporated into maybe the staple metal drumming thing to make them more unique. And I try to emulate that more. I try to make grooves as opposed to speed because I'm old now and I can't I can't I can't keep up with the dudes. Like I'll see Levi playing, organectomy, and it just blows my mind. Yeah, oh, exactly got the same shirt on,
phenomenal,
and it
phenomenal.
absolutely blows my mind. I've seen, Jamie play with who's it,
Also, right.
Ulcerate, for example, and that's just off the chain. Just insane drumming, and it's kind of disheartening a little bit when you're like, fuck, you know. I,
Oh
I,
yeah,
I, I wish I could play like that, but I just I have too many ankle injuries. I almost lost my leg when I was 7. So I mean, no matter how much I practice, it causes a lot of joint pain and stuff. So I do the best I can, stick with sort of moderate and modest tempos, and just try to introduce groove, and I don't know, do metal that way as opposed to speed. Mm.
sure, sure. Just speaking of Levi, I have been watching him play drums for over 10 years. He used to come around to an apartment here in the Hutt Valley of a mate of mine. And even as a teenager, he was something special. So I'm not sure if that makes you feel better. It doesn't make me feel any better, but
No,
he's a fantastic drummer and has been. He just had it. Speaking of it, how would you describe your style?
well, I guess it comes back to what I was saying before about groove stuff. I'm definitely more of a groove guy, and I'm more of a drummer that plays to the song. So I try not to embellish it too much with myself. Maybe when I was younger, there'd be drum fills everywhere, and I was just sort of showing off. But I think everyone does that for a while, and then hopefully, you sort of realize that you're sort of servicing the song. You're there to make the song um, a coherent thing, So if you're all over the place, I mean, some drummers can pull it off, like the dude who used to be in Cynic. He's passed away, of course. Sean Reinert.
Yeah.
He played on Death Human. He was a massive. Well, I don't know if he was an influence, but he blew me away when I heard Human. I got into Cynic after that, and that guy can play fills and intricate shit all the way through stuff, but still maintain the rock solid groove. So it can be done, but you need to be superhuman to achieve it. So I don't know. I'm pretty much I service the soul. That's pretty much what I do.
Sure.
Mm.
Very nice. As drummers, most of us are always practicing and trying to improve something. Is there a specific technique that you are practicing or working on at the moment?
Well, as you get older, things start to seize up and don't work quite as well as they used to. So I really have to, I really just have to try to maintain a baseline. That's kind of all I can do. So I practice my sort of double kicks a lot, and my tempos aren't super high, but I just try to make them more consistent, because I don't. I've experimented with triggers, but I'm too much of a messy drummer. Like I quite often put my left foot down and rest it, and if you got a trigger, it goes click and it messes things up. So because I'm old school as fuck, so I find that I have to use raw power to get that bass drum sound out, and so as a result, that doesn't give me as much speed as I'd like. So yeah, just I don't know, keep myself limber, I guess, is the order of the day more than anything else.
Cool, fair, cool. Branching off a little bit from that, who is your favorite drummer that you've seen live? You've seen thousands by
Um,
now.
hmm. I have. I mean, it's kind of, yeah. I mean, it's. I think if you ask this question to any drummer, it's kind of hard to really say this guy was the best because there are so many amazing top tier drummers out there that it seems unfair to single one out. I've seen Cattle Decapitation a bunch of times, and Dave McGraw is an absolute fucking machine. Um, I was talking to their guitarist Josh when they were over last, because I had the good fortune of being the guy to drive them around, and Josh needed to go to the warehouse to buy some stuff, so we chatted on the way, and I did sort of point out that the last time I saw them, they were blisteringly fast, and Josh said, "Oh well, now we use like clicks, just to keep things in check." Because I said, like, Dave used to go fucking ape shit speed wise, and how do you play that fast? And he's like, "Oh, it's virtually impossible." So now we run a click, and so when I watched that show, everything was just tight as fuck, and like his drumming really shone because everything was consistent. He wasn't trying to keep up with himself, although he is incredibly fast out the gate anyway. But yeah, maybe Dave McGraw. I saw Mario play. They played at the Trust Arena with Mastodon a few years back, and seeing him play live was amazing. Um, yeah, heaps, man. The dude from Emperor, I can't even remember his name. He was amazing. Pretty much, yeah. Everyone's amazing, really.
Sure, absolutely. Right. So now we're going to play a little game that I call first, last, best, worst. So I want you to
Okay.
tell me the very first show that you ever played, the last show that you played, just for throwing it in there, the
Mm.
best show that you've ever played, and the worst show that you've ever played.
Okay. The first show I ever played, the first real show that wasn't like at the school quad or something, was a battle of the bands that I entered when I was about 15. It was at the power station. So my very first show was at the power station, which
Wow.
these days, these days all drummers go, "Oh wow, that's amazing." But back then, the power station was not a big deal. Like bands used to play there all the time. I played there heaps back in the, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s. It was kind of like whammy bar. Now, of course, it's all the big boys play there only. But yeah, so that was my first show. I was an instrumental band. We came. I think they actually forgot our name because we were kind of metally, a little bit metal, a little bit rocky metal. And yeah, I think a band called Double J and Twice the T, who were like a rap outfit at the time, they won, and everyone was really pissed about it because they already had a recording contract.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and it was supposed to be you get a chance to go in the studio and you can record one song. That was the prize, and these guys already had like an EP out, and so everyone was spewing. A couple of our teachers, I remember our English teacher, she yelled out "Get fucked" at the top of her voice. She had one too many wines. So it's interesting hearing your very proper English teacher. She was about 65. Yell "Get fucked" at the top of her voice to this sort of panel of judges. It was hilarious. So that was my first gig. The most recent gig I think was probably the Napier Death Fest. I've played there a few times. Shout out to Roger for putting that on regularly. I know at the moment he's organising the one for next year. And
March.
he's doing a great service to the New Zealand metal scene because he brings bands from all over the country together, like something around 20 bands over a weekend. It is a phenomenal weekend. So if you haven't been before, I recommend everyone go to that. If you're into metal, obviously. If you're not into metal, would be a bad idea. Um, but yeah, that's the most recent one, I think. I think we played right after Organectomy. Oh
Oh,
no, that was the one before. I don't remember who we played after last time. But anyway, that was terrifying. Playing after Organectomy, and the other time we played after Ulcerate. So no pressure, eh?
Jesus.
Yeah, man, it's terrifying. What was the next one? That was the first one. The
Best show.
best.
Yeah. What's the best show you've ever played?
I don't know, man. I've played a lot of good shows. I would say maybe if I'm going to pick one out of a hat. I think I remember playing Smash Fest was always good. But there was one gig that Primacy played at Totara Street in I think it's Tauranga, and that's a really big venue. It's a beautiful venue. It had such a nice sound, massive stage, and we were kind of crowd height. And the guy who had put that on, um, he'd he'd busted his ass, and he'd got a massive crowd in there, and it was a really good show. I don't remember how we played. I think we did okay, but the crowd was really responsive, and that's really the key of a good show. It's not necessarily how you play; it's how well you're received. You can play a terrible show and everyone goes nuts. Awesome. You can play an
Yes.
amazing show, nail everything, and everyone stands here like a dead fish. It's not a good show. So,
Yes.
and my worst one, I can think of one. It was around 1993, and I was in this band called 12 Colored Pencils that were like they're like a mainstream kind of a rock pop band, kind of like influenced by Faith No More kind of thing, if you will.
Okay.
And we we had been recording at Revolver Studios, which was next to the Weet-Bix on the Weet-Bix in the Weet-Bix factory. You know where that is? The sanitarium factory in Parr Road in around. It's near Royal Oak.
Okay. Sure.
Anyway, so it was a brand new studio was there, and we were invited to play to all these important industry people, and we were fucking stoked. We're like, okay, this is it. And then there was a mate of mine used to like to cause trouble at gigs because he was just I don't know, he was just like this little chaotic man. He just loved chaos. And he just wandered up to the largest guy in the room, grabbed the guy's beer, sculled it, and just yelled Satan right in his face. And so the guy decked him.
Sure.
So then a massive brawl broke out. Everyone was hitting everybody and nobody knew who was hitting who. Um, and yeah, the whole event was cancelled. So that was a complete waste. We didn't even play. Um,
Well, sounds like a great time.
yeah. So that was the worst show ever. Mm.
Yeah, I bet. All right. So this is where we round out the show. So this is your chance to plug your band or bands, which you've already done lots of, and shout out to any people around that you'd like to.
Right. I wrote down notes because I'm terrible. So I'd like to thank all the event and festival organizers around New Zealand because they're the ones who really kind of make the New Zealand music scene happen. Without them, a lot of smaller bands or disorganized bands wouldn't have the opportunity to play. So we all really appreciate that. Jake Sisson,
Mm,
obviously.
mm,
Stella and Steve for Smash Fest when that was running. That was another amazing event. Roger and
fuck yeah.
Claude for the Napier Death Fest, which is still going on. And the Hunts from Christchurch for things like Tombstone, things like that. Shout out to all the New Zealand metal bands that are killing it at the moment, and it kind of makes me proud as a Kiwi when other bands are doing really well. It's kind of like when people are into sports, like let's say All Blacks fans, they'll all go to the show and they'll all wear the All Blacks shirts, and every time the All Blacks do really well, they feel like they won. So it's that
Yeah.
same kind of thing. Like when Organ to me are touring the States, I mean, I'm not involved at all. I don't have anything to do with it, but kind of I get that sort of pride that some Kiwis are actually killing it internationally, and that makes me feel good about New Zealand and the potential that New Zealand musicians have. Because in the past, it's always been overseas bands that got huge, and it was very rare for a New Zealand band to do that. I guess it still
Sure,
is, but it's great to see when it happens.
sure, and it is increasing
Um,
in
yeah, and of
speed as
course,
well. It is increasing in
yes,
speed
yes,
as well.
I think so. But I guess that's the dawn of things like Spotify and all those things where everyone is basically the algorithm shares equally. It doesn't distinguish which country you're from necessarily. So maybe that helps. Although I'm not a fan of Spotify in general. I think it kind of hinders most things. But for what it's worth, it does some good, I'm sure. And thank you to you for, of course, reaching out and asking me to to kind of test drive your show with me as you crash test dummy
Fuck yeah.
to see how that went. So I hope it was okay.
Wow. It was fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Big Will, I fucking love you, man. Thank you so much for being a part of this. We'll see you next time.